Hello, my name is Dr. Constance Landry. This is day 0001 of Project Peter Pan, and I am the chief scientist for this top secret research project. I've been debriefed by the President of the United States, General Thomas Mulberry II of the United States Army, and the spy agency known as the Shadow Brigade, which is working with all of the countries in the United Nations to find out what has been happening with the weather changes and extreme events of the past few months. Not sure why they named the project Peter Pan. Maybe they are scared of their own shadows because the way the general sounded, he wanted to go to DEF CON 2. While many of my questions were denied due to classified information and a need-to-know basis, and trust me, I am all too familiar with this and will continue to push for more. I've gotten the basic rundown of what I am to lead here, though, however. I have PhDs in molecular biology, biophysics, and astrophysics, modern physics as well, but I've also studied acoustics, mechanics, and optics. Based on my broad expertise, I was chosen to help to study the weather changes and strange new species sightings, and the potential they are related. There are also supposed objects we might receive in a few weeks that have properties never before seen, and I have audio and video files and photos from the storms themselves that I have to comb through and take notes on. Of course, I will be very busy, so I will record these notes here on my recorder as they come in and give you updates on how the team is doing. I still have to find my assistant and some lab workers to help. Hopefully we'll have my assistant in the next week. But I'm very proud to be able to work on this project. Ever since I was little, I dreamed of being in the science field to change the world. What a better way than to work on such a highly classified mission. I'm very grateful to get this opportunity. I know I'm owed it after putting my life on the line during the robot wars, discovering that the AI was evolving to be more human, and were just as susceptible to lazy security protocols as we were. I mean, how many people still don't use a VPN? I've also been the first to warn about how our ancestors didn't do enough to curb climate change, and how the actions they took just held off some of the worst effects until now. I hope my research proves that we need to take drastic action, but I will, as always, keep my opinions out of this project. My theories will only be based on the facts from our research, and I will not push anything if there is no evidence to back it up. I now plan on getting some sleep, and will begin my tasks tomorrow. I'm guessing it'll be a busy day. Over and out. This is Dr. Constance Landry again, and this is day 0007 of Project Peter Pan.
And I'm Captain Hook.
I apologize, but that is my new assistant who is more known for his work than his professionalism.
Sorry, Constance. I'm just so excited to work with the person who changed how we perceive quantum mechanics with the theory on electromagnetism and time travel. What was that again?
I know what you're doing, and it isn't needed, old friend. Everyone knows my theories. That's why I was hired. Now back to this recording. As you have heard, I have now hired my assistant, Dr. Timothy Musgrave. He worked with me during the robot wars and is one of my most trusted sources on thermodynamics and several other physics topics. I trust him with my life. Together we have hired the rest of the lab workers and are excited to announce that we've begun the research on schedule and have already started to compile some notes, which I will share soon.
And I am excited to announce that I am now in first place in our fantasy football league after a big win over Constance.
Tim, don't make me throw you out of this room. Remember, I am your boss right now.
Sorry, Constance. I'm just trying to break the ice. I know the Shadow Brigade plays too. And they're the ones listening, no?
Well, yes. Them and the president.
Oh, no. I'm sorry for my strange enthusiasm, sir. I will get back to work.
As I was saying, we have been studying the weather patterns back at Mount Rushmore and the strange fogginess up by the faces. From what we can tell, that fog isn't fog at all. It is actually some sort of gas that is escaping the rocks, and the residue makes it appear like the faces are eroding. I know the lunatics want to think that demons are somehow involved. Why they vote in those leaders in that state, I will never know. But the main findings by us are that the constant rain, extreme fluctuations in temperatures, and strange light patterns due to the thick dark clouds are all factors. Surprisingly, the lightning in the area has actually never struck the rock face as far as we know. but most of the forest that surrounds the area seems to be in dire shape. I have never seen this gas effect or a weather pattern that persists for several weeks before. And from what I can tell, the new weather patterns at the Florida Keys and in Nevada are not the same, but I cannot rule out that they aren't related. I'm going to be listening and analyzing the sound next, so stay tuned for that. Over and out. Dr. Constance Landry again, and this is day 0014 of Project Peter Pan. We have some very exciting news that some pieces of the strange ships that allegedly just appeared on the military mission at the Florida Keys have been tagged for delivery. I'm excited to see these pieces because I believe it will actually give credence to my theory on electromagnetism and time travel.
I told you it would be important. You see, Constance? You are as good at this as you are at winning fantasy football titles.
Oh, it's him. For the last time, I am not trading you my top running back for that bum of a backup quarterback. Sorry, everyone. But as I was saying, based on the audio analysis of the weather patterns at Ghost Mountain and Las Vegas, I've learned that there's actually several signals hidden in the sound waves, and it seems that the sound itself is not from the wind, but from hidden electrical and magnetic charges that seem to be all around the areas. Once we get these ship pieces, I can look for myself if there's any evidence of time travel. It could be very important in understanding how the universe works. And of course, it can possibly help explain these events, as it worries me that the weather patterns persist, spread, and only seem to be getting worse. It makes me think that this could actually be an attack of some kind, and not a climate event. And that brings me to the questions you haven't answered. I believe it is a need-to-know thing now. What does the United Nations say about all this? Is there a rogue country doing research that we know about? Is there a rogue group? Perhaps this is another AI incident. I really need more answers to truly understand what we are up against and whether I should further analyze this strange audio to see what the source of this activity is.
Don't forget to ask about that odd rumor of some sort of prophecy.
Tim, I will do nothing of the sort right now. Please, I will speak with you later.
Okay. I'm just saying that it could be related if time travel is involved.
I know, Tim, and I appreciate the help, but we do not have enough information to go around chasing rumors.
Okay, I understand. Talk to you soon.
Sorry about that again. Timothy is very enthusiastic and he can never hold in a thought. That's what makes him so valuable. He is also thinking, which is nice. I do not want to alarm anyone, but I did hear of this rumor and it does interest me if it is true, but I am not sure it is the most pressing need right now. Instead, I want those ship pieces and I want some more information to better serve Project Peter Pan. Talk to you all again soon. Over and out. Dr. Constance Landry on day 0021 of Project Peter Pan. I'm recording this discussion between me and my assistant, Dr. Timothy Musgrave, to better serve your understanding of what we have found out from the pieces of ship debris.
Brace yourself, everyone. These findings are fairly unbelievable.
Enough of that, Tim. Please let me know what you have found out.
Yes. So first things first, we had to get creative because concrete data is pretty tough these days. As you know, Constance, our computers and electromagnetic readers were going haywire days before we even got the pieces of ship. We weren't sure if it was the snowstorm that has been going on for a few days, but as soon as those pieces found themselves in our lab, it was clear that that was the source. Especially since two colleagues disappeared and then reappeared a few days later.
But why were these events significant?
Well, because the lab workers didn't remember a thing. Believed they had only lost a few minutes of time and had the same strange effect on our readers and computers. In fact, once we worked a bit of code, we discovered a strange pattern of sound waves emanating from both the pieces of ship and the lab workers. Once we canceled out the sound waves, the computers and readers started to work.
But there was still a problem.
Yes, there was. You see, the readings pointed to neither the ship pieces nor the lab workers actually being there.
Meaning?
Well, they were clearly there as we can see, touch, hear, interact in any way, with the workers and the debris. But the readings told us a different story, that there was no electric charge present. Not a positive one, not a negative one. In theory, both the lab workers and debris should be scattered atoms, but somehow they exist as they do.
Clearly, we believed all of our equipment to be faulty. I decided to do blood tests on the workers and had Timothy look up potential past cases.
You're not going to believe this, but there were past cases of people with these same readings. But they're from 100 years ago, when technology wasn't as good. So a lot of the findings can't be trusted. However, there was one tidbit of information that got us both.
There were photographs of the individuals.
You see, the lab workers register like they do because they seem to have passed through some sort of a portal, so to speak. They don't remember the journey there or back, but based on the past case and ours, it seems like touching the debris somehow shot them back into time. They were in the past for 2 years being studied and probed, housed in a secret government agency. From my research, everything else on this agency disappeared from record. Nothing exists.
But that's not all. We canceled out the sound waves in the storms, and guess what? They also don't register as real. Tim, can you explain the shadow effect?
Well, the shadow effect is pretty interesting. The object's shadows are even stranger than the objects themselves because unlike the objects that cast them, the shadows give off readings of actually being there. And what is strange about these shadows is that they are actually giving off separate sound waves. Now, we analyze them every way we know how, and this is different than the other objects. These sound waves mimic human speech, but are on a wavelength we cannot hear with our human ears. However, the lab workers...
Tim, I will take it from here. Thank you. The lab workers have been recorded by the robots whispering something. At first, we thought they were going mad, but we believe the lab workers can hear the sound waves. We suggest a conference call in a few days. We should have answers by then, and I expect answers from you. Over and out. This is Dr. Constance Landry, Chief Scientist for Project Peter Pan, and I am joined by my assistant on the project, Dr. Timothy Musgrave.
Hello, everyone. Anyone else hear what's going on with the football season? Canceled due to the spreading of storms. I don't think we will be able to crown our fantasy champs this year. This is Franklin George Wilkins III of the Shadow Brigade. I hear you, Timothy. Me and my colleagues really wanted to win that Green Ball trophy this year with all the craziness. That's what we call our championship trophy, of course. Took our minds off of reality for a little bit to keep us sane, you know? Green Ball, huh?
This is General Thomas Mulberry II, and I command you both to shut up about fantasy football. We have more pressing matters at hand, like whether I should go to DEFCON 2.
General, I don't think your nukes will solve this problem any more than it did with the robot wars. Where is the president?
The president could not be here due to other pressing matters. Did you hear that the cities along Lake Michigan are now on fire, but no buildings are actually burning down? And that dust storm is so bad in Las Vegas that everyone is now being evacuated? It's clear that this is an attack, and if it wasn't for you bleeding heart science nerds, I could have blown those robots to smithereens well before you gave them that virus.
General, with all due respect, you need to understand that as a Shadow Brigade member who actually administered that virus and was in on the meetings with Dr. Landry and Dr. Musgrave, that you should stick to whether your army is fit enough. Atomic energy would have only strengthened those robots' energy systems, while also wiping out innocent human lives. They were begging that we do that. Luckily, smarter minds prevailed.
Okay, I think we've had enough bickering for once. If this is all there will be, it will have to do. And General, please relay what I'm about to say to the President as soon as possible.
Do not worry about my job, Doctor. I have my orders, and I have an oath to uphold. Now please tell me what the hell is going on?
You already have my updates from before, and it is worse than we all thought. And before I actually continue, I know the truth already, and I need you to admit it, General. These shadows are living specimens, aren't they?
Wait, did you say living? Living how?
I mean living as an intelligent, evolving being. But they are not living like you or I, Franklin. You see, we decided to continue the time travel tests. Had 2 willing volunteers that would put recording equipment and embed it into their clothes, and another 2 willing volunteers allowed us to put a chip in their hand. They touched the debris and vanished, only to reappear a few hours ago. And that's why I called this emergency meeting.
I thought I made it clear that we should wait on those tests for safety concerns. Doctor, you always seem to make me question why they brought you in.
General, these tests were needed to understand what I know now. Trust me, we needed to know this.
What did you find? And don't tell me. It's related to that prophecy, isn't it?
And there it is. You see, General, once the lab workers returned, I too deemed it wasn't safe for time travel, not because of the journey itself, but because of what was happening to the objects and the people. Blood tests confirmed an unknown property. That property matched up with the shadows and the storms. It was like they were infected somehow.
Infected?
Yes. The reason they didn't read on our instruments is because on a molecular level, they had changed into something our minds cannot comprehend.
We deciphered what the lab workers were whispering. They are saying, "Bring me the green bowl. Bring me the relic." That's when I decided to do some digging. I made some calls to friends. I came across some random files, not going to say how, and voila, the prophecy.
That also gave me a theory as to what the shadows are. And you're not going to like it, because it's difficult to comprehend as well.
Doctor, that prophecy you all speak of is something we've known but ignored because it sounded just a little insane. But recently, we've been looking back at it. Are you telling me that there's some truth in it?
Tim, can you take this one?
Franklin, what I found was a trail of files that goes back centuries. I'm sending you these files now so that you have a better understanding. As you can see, these shadows seem to be manipulating time. The Great Pyramid was built, but no one remembers how or why. We now have our theories, but what I can tell, 4 of the builders were our lab workers. Perhaps that's where that ancient alien nonsense comes from. I'm not understanding any of this.
And that's why I get paid the big bucks, Franklin. The lab workers vanished again today, and that's when we found out the information on the pyramid. It seems that the pyramid's properties are the same as all of the other objects I speak of. They don't exist, and yet they do. But crazier yet is that there seems to be 14 spots across the world with elevated electromagnetic readings. Those are the spots with the worst storms. I know the area around the Great Pyramid is also somehow lost right now. No one can find it on satellite images. It's just one big dark spot. General, I need to know that we are evacuating all of the places with storms right now. We have family.
Doctor, what you speak of was known already. Need to know basis, of course.
What? What's the matter with you? You could have cost lives and valuable time.
Doctor, we've been preparing underground cities in undisclosed locations for weeks now. Evacuations have started already. Yours will be coming soon. I just needed to know what you knew. And you have helped us immensely. Now you know why we call it Project Peter Pan. Living shadows? Haven't you ever heard of that? What I need from you guys now is to keep working to find out if these so-called shadow beings have any weaknesses. That was the president's plan all along.
Don't you get it, General? These are not shadow beings. The shadows are living like a hive mind. If we probe one piece, all respond. The infection means that any of us could become infected if we are exposed too long. And the reason as to why we just learned of our lab workers being at the Great Pyramid is because the shadows also show interdimensional properties.
What does that mean? What the doctor means is that because the shadows seem to infect while time traveling, the shadows also seem to be rewriting time. We cannot perceive it, but essentially anything we know could be due to this activity, including that prophecy.
Are you saying that this prophecy could be a trap?
We don't know. But what we do know is that while we cannot seem to truly understand what we are fighting, there is something we might have for protection against infection. As we said before, the shadows register as negative charges. If we could find something with a positive enough charge, we can be safe because it should interact with the negative charge and neutralize it. From what we know, there seems to be readings at all those 14 spots with high electromagnetic readings like I talked about before. I've heard stories of a new element being found at one of those spots. Is this true, General?
Element, huh? You really are too smart for your own good. Yes, I will look into it for you and get you these files. Give me a little more time. I must now debrief the president. Over and out.
Crazy, huh? Who would have thought that we would need to save the world again? Thanks for these files, Timothy. I must go now to talk with my fellow members. We have to hash out a plan to help you guys. Call back soon. Over and out. Constance, we should get to work on this as soon as possible.
Tim, please go call your wife. Let me handle this. I'll let you know when I need you.
Okay, Constance. Get some rest, please. You'll need it.
Not sure how I can sleep now. Over and out. Dr. Constance Landry. Day 0030 of Project Peter Pan. I'm now locked in my room. Haven't slept in 72 hours. Fear that I don't have enough time. Timothy's been infected. He killed several. It's just the blackness of his eyes. I don't know what I understand anymore. Maybe I'm losing my sanity finally after all these years. No one's left. Just me and Timothy. Well, it used to be Timothy. Communications have been cut. All I have are these recordings that I hope to find a way to send. I fear that I might have to try to fight my way to the debris. I have a Wi-Fi chip. I can send the files. Possibly get help. If I succeed, but don't make it, please don't let my research go to waste. Don't let Timothy's life go to waste. He sacrificed himself for the good of us all. And now, I fear it is my time to join him. Over and out.
The world's essence slows, shadows spread from the pyramids to the oceans to the coasts. But behold the test, a smoking gun, a quest passed down for generations. A prophesized hero, the champion. In order to save everyone, thou must drink from the cup. 12 of us on this mission. What's next? 17 weeks to be the best. Injuries and buys, thou should have guessed. The waiver wire request was denied, but maybe a trade will provide an edge and a chance to be a legend. Fight for humanity, reach the goal. It's a quest for the green ball. Green ball. It's a quest for the green ball. Green ball. Green ball. Green ball. It's a quest
Welcome to the quest for the green ball, the shadows of chaos. I'm your host, Anthony Oto, bringing you this fantasy football show with a twist. And what a start to the episode with some mythology being added to our post-apocalyptic sci-fi theme. Of course, you see my background. This is my home, the Great Superior Eye. I won the game of the week this week, so I guess I'm going all out. Technically, it's because of where I have to record, but you guys get to enjoy this background. And of course, the back and forth between characters in our opening was the same with our league players, as there were several shakeups in the league with two divisions changing leaders and another close game of the week. Next week is looking to be another challenging one for many of us, with little room for error, with bunched up standings. I mean, we'll preview those games later, of course. Plus, I'll go over some of the major injuries with some big ones reshaping both the NFL and fantasy football the past few weeks. But before we get to any of that, it's time to go over last week's results, as 2 games separate 9 of us, and 1 game is the difference between a playoff spot and being on the outside looking in. First, the Eastern Territory's Risky Business continued his strong road performance this season with a 105.6 to 87.92 win over Meow Master at her Central Territory home of Ghost Mountain. The Derrick Henry potential season-ending injury didn't help Meow Master, as he had his lowest output of the season despite 28 attempts, significantly lowering her 60% chance to win. A.J. Brown did have 155 yards and a touchdown with a 50-plus yard TD bonus point, and Amari Cooper had 122 yards and a score. But one of the main differences was that quarterback. Risky Business's Tom Brady outdueled Meow Master's Jalen Hurts 34.2 to 11.22, as Brady collected another 4 touchdowns. Kamara added a score, and Pittman had 2 scores. The Steelers' defense also stepped up with 13 points. Risky Business moves to 5-3 and is in second place in the Eastern Territory. Meow Master falls to 2-6 and is 2 games back in the Central Territory. Western Territories, the Stellar Bitches traveled to Steel Shores to take on the Central Territories. My Heart Will Go On, and the Bitches pulled off an 81.4 to 47.76 win. Matthew Stafford's 3 touchdowns were key for the Bitches, which had a 54% chance to win. The Bills defense went back to its top scoring ways, and Beasley's 110 yards and a Mike Evans touchdown helped mask the loss of Calvin Ridley, who is taking time away from the game for mental health. My Heart Will Go On was hurt by COVID-19 with Devontae Adams out. Aaron Rodgers did still have a couple of scores, but it clearly wasn't enough. The Stellar Bitches moved to 5-3 and are now in first place in the Western Territory, and My Heart Will Go On falls to 3-5, trailing by a game in the Central Territory. The Eastern Territory's Multiple Scoregasms collected her second straight home win with a 109.3 to 73.9 victory over the Western Territory's Gal at the Gateway Islands. This match was a 50-50 toss-up up until Dak Prescott was ruled out on Sunday night, catching Gal in a bind as he took a big 0. Ryan Tannehill's 3 passing touchdowns with the 50-plus yard TD bonus point gave the Scoregasms a 28.2 point advantage. At that position, Aaron Jones and Eli Mitchell had touchdowns for a combined 36.7 points, just edging Gal's duo of Jonathan Taylor and Najee Harris. Godwin's big day with 140 yards and a score edged Robert Woods' big day, who had 2 scores. The Multiple Scoregasms moved to 4-4 and are back in the playoff picture despite being 2 games out in the Eastern Territory. Gal falls to 4-4 and is now a game out of first in the Western Territory. The Eastern Territories Remember the Titans hosted Central Territory's Low-Key Lebowski Thor at Liberty's Watch. And Remember the Titans came away with this 3rd straight win, 92.76 to 76.36. The win was expected, with Remember the Titans coming in with a 64% chance to get that victory. Joe Burrow had a decent game with 3 TDs, despite actually struggling a bit against the Jets, and Harris and Kupp added touchdowns. Lamb and Darrell Williams both had over 100 yards as well. Cobb had a couple of scores, and Keenan Allen and Melvin Gordon also reached the end zone for Lebowski Thor, but Kirk Cousins struggled, and the Buccaneers defense decided to get negative points again. Remember the Titans is back in the playoff picture at 4-4, but is 2 games back in the Eastern Territory. Low-key Lebowski Thor falls to 4-4 and is now in second place in the Central Territory. The Eastern Territory's Green Acres travel to Skyward Peaks to take on the Western Territory's Uncle Chusty in a very key matchup. And despite this matchup being listed as a 50-50 toss-up, it was Green Acres continuing his hot streak with a fifth straight victory, winning 113.62 to 80.46. The running backs for Green Acres fueled this one, with Henderson, Ekelor, and Mixon combining for 5 touchdowns and 60.8 points. Uncle Justy had just 10.5 points from that position. Josh Allen did have 3 scores for Uncle Justy, with one of them going to Stephon Diggs, but Adam Thielen also had a touchdown. The Seahawks defense also had a return touchdown to edge the Panthers on Uncle Justy's side. The Green Acres is still the number 1 overall team in the league at 6-2, also leading the Eastern Territory by a game. Uncle Justy falls to 4-4 and is now in 3rd place in the Western Territory due to tiebreaker. And that brings us to which saw my Central Territory Great Superior Superb Owls host the Western Territory Siamese Dreamcats at the Great Superior Eye. My Great Superior Owls entered this matchup with a 56.1% chance to win, and the game was even closer than that, as my Superb Owls edged the Siamese Dreamcats 90.7 and 90.14. The keys to the game did matter per usual, with the Cats getting 41 yards and a score from Jamar Chase, and my Superb Owls getting 94 yards and a score from Tyreek Hill. But Chase actually kind of underperformed against the Jets, as we all caught a glimpse of what bungling it up means. Deebo Samuel's 171 yards also outdueled DK Metcalf despite his 2 scores, but the rest of this match was really just trading small points here and there. Patrick Mahomes struggled again, but still had a touchdown, while Wentz had 3 scores, but also turned the ball over twice, with those negative points really hurting the Dreamcats. James Conner had 2 touchdowns to Chase Edmonds' 1 score, but the final difference was just about 2 points only. While Nick Chubb's underperformance was what the Dreamcats needed, the Cowboys defense, Kyle Pitts, and Laviska Shenault all struggled. My Superb Owls are now 4-4, move back into 1st place in the Central Territory. The Dreamcats, which have now lost 3 close games in the past 4 weeks, fall to 3-5 overall and are 2 games back in the Western Territory. And of course, I won this big rivalry game, taking home the Golden Cat necklace, which I don't have at the moment, but will soon. And I'll show you all that on an Instagram story coming up in the next couple weeks. But it is my 2nd rivalry award for the season, which I'm very excited about. Despite a rough stretch, losing 3 games in a row, I'm back in 1st place, baby. Back in 1st. I'm feeling pretty good about this one because, even though, once again, my team kind of underperformed from what my expectations were, I still feel pretty good about this roster. I'm just waiting for everyone to click at the right time. I'd rather that happen in the playoffs, to be honest. So surviving each week, getting that W, it's all I can ask for. I was worried a bit with the struggles of Patrick Mahomes, man. The Giants game going down to like one of those flick passes, 24 yards, like that's all I want. And then he had a kneel, so I had to worry about that. Like there was too much time left. So I was very nervous until the last kneel down, and I could see that I won. And then I had to wait to see if there was any stat changes. Obviously the night started good. I had Patrick Mahomes going to Tyreek Hill. That's a big 12 points. That's kind of a big, like when I saw that happen, I was like, okay, I could do this, They nearly connected on some other deep passes, which would have definitely ended it, but Mahomes is essentially being messed with right now. They're forcing him into decisions he hasn't had to make. They're playing the 2 high deep safeties way back, like 18 yards back the whole game. They're kind of forcing a dink and dunk game. But then you see the advantage that once they figure that out, and if I can figure it out, I'm sure Andy Reid, his staff, and Patrick Mahomes are seeing the same things I am. Essentially, Travis Kelce will benefit big time, I think, because I think there's a lot of space in the middle between the numbers. I think Mahomes just has to they've been going outside. And then you got short passes, screen passes. They got so much speed. Even their backup running backs have speed. You got Tyreek Hill. You just get those guys in space or get a couple blocks going. They could get a big gain, and then they can't play the 2 deep safeties anymore. Suddenly they have to start, changing up the defense, and that's how you get a one-on-one with a Tyreek Hill, and maybe you get one big play. They just can't expect to do that the whole game. They have to kind of manage it, wait for their opportunity, go for it. I just think that, and again, if they run the ball, they might get second and short, third and short opportunities. And if they're running the ball well, big time. So I don't think fantasy managers should panic on Mahomes. I'm certainly not. I think he's going to be a top 3 quarterback by the end of the season. You heard it right here, folks. As for my outlook, I think Nick Chubb's going to get back to what he's doing. Josh Jacobs, if he's healthy, I know he's going to get opportunities. I just think that overall, my biggest weakness is defense, tight end. I'm kind of excited for picking up the Saints defense. I know they're not going to do good every week, but I think that's probably the best defense to have based on what was left. And then I'm surprised Loki Lebowski-Thor dropped George Kittle. He might be coming back. That would be huge for me at tight end. I feel like that's been a huge difference in my lineup. Once he's back healthy, I think I have a fairly strong team from top to bottom. I think I'm going to do quite good. I am worried about my depth. Jameis Winston just went out. Myles Gaskin's, not doing as well. Henry Ruggs just had that horrible accident, which, thoughts go out to all families and everybody in that, but, nobody wants to see that. But going back to fantasy football, I have a feeling that I'm going to be going up. I think I could win the Central Territory. I think I could push for a first round bye. So we'll see what happens. I got some big matchups coming up. I got some huge matchups coming up, actually. I got the multiple scoregasms coming up. I got Risky Business coming up this week. I got Uncle Justy coming up. These are all huge tiebreaker games. And then in week 12, when we go back to division play, I got Loki Lebowski-Thor. Both the Risky Business and the Lebowski-Thor game will be games of the week as well. So I'll be on the spotlight. It's just going to be crazy times. And this race is going to go down to the wire. Best case scenario, I'm playing for the division title week 12. Game of the week, trying to make the playoffs. I'm not looking past Uncle Justy, though. I have to take care of business here. This is a huge matchup, huge tiebreaker implications. Uncle Justy's been banged up, injuries, but he still has, a lot of players that can score a lot of points. And because of my underperformances and guys not clicking at the same time, I haven't been getting over 100 points lately. So I really need to have a solid game here, I think. I need to get this win, and then I could start looking forward to the next couple of games, which, Risky Business is huge. That's big time. And then Scoregasms will be huge. If I could somehow run the table here, go through Lebowski-Thor, I'll probably have the division title. I'll probably be going for a first round bye, but it is not going to be easy. I'll tell you that much. It's going to be pretty nuts. So now that we've gone through that, next I'm going to take a look at our top injuries in this league, what it means for the rest of the regular season. Stay tuned. With 6 weeks to go before the playoffs for most fantasy football leagues, these injuries and their replacements make coaching very key down the stretch here. This week, I wanted to take a quick look at some of the biggest ones and what they mean in fantasy football. And I'm going to use our league based on who's on our teams. Of course, I do want to say that I do hope for the quick recovery of all these players. I want them back on the field. Injuries obviously cause a lot of mental health issues, no matter what level it is. There's the challenge of rehab, how tough it is not to be there with your teammates out on the field. No one should wish that on anyone. I think that's the stupidest part of fantasy football, and guys are wishing guys get injured. From a human perspective, I wish injuries just didn't happen. That's the challenge of football, I understand. But from a purely NFL and fantasy football perspective, I just want the best players on the field at all times. They deserve to have the opportunity to play, and I want the best against the best, and I think everybody should. Still, again, injuries do happen, and they most likely continue every single week here. So when talking about our fantasy football league, I wanted to take a rundown of these top names. So let's go. Starting in the Central Territory, we got Loki Lebowski-Thor. He's been banged up pretty bad. He lost number 1 overall pick running back Christian McCaffrey for several weeks. He's still on IR, might be back this week. Might be back next week. That could be a big boost to his lineup. But since he went down, Lebowski-Thor is 2-3. So it obviously has hurt him. Thor also lost George Kittle since week 5 and dropped him for some strange reason. So even though Kittle is expected to return this week or next week, Lebowski-Thor needs to continue to look elsewhere for tight end help. Wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. was also out a few weeks. He's really not been 100% all season. He's also got Baker Mayfield thrown to him, but it's not good when you're not healthy. Kyler Murray has an ankle injury and is not guaranteed to start this next week. That hurts as well. Even if he starts, ankle injury with a guy that's supposed to run the ball is not too good. Meow Master has the next biggest blow in the Central Territory. First of all, Meow Master hasn't coached all year and might essentially be throwing into the towel, despite just being 2 games back of a playoff spot. But Meow Master has put up some fights with her core of Derrick Henry, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, and DeAndre Hopkins. A.J. Brown missed a few games this season, and she's been without tight end Logan Thomas. But Derrick Henry is the number 1 running back in fantasy this season, and he's out for what looks to be the entire fantasy season. At least for fantasy purposes, it doesn't look like he's going to be back. While Jeremy McNichols and Adrian Peterson look to be 2 replacement possibilities for the Titans, no one replaces Derrick Henry. So, regardless if those guys are picked up, no one's picking up another Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is probably going to be a top 10 running back in points for several weeks, despite not playing. That's how high up he is. I think he's like 40 points ahead of Jonathan Taylor. My great superior Superb Owls has had some injuries. Nick Chubb was out a couple of weeks. That hurt me really bad. Josh Jacobs also missed time with multiple injuries. Deebo Samuel's not 100%. He's dealing with a calf issue, so I hope that doesn't come back and bite me. Michael Gallup's been on IR since week 1. He might return this week or next week, as well as George Kittle, the tight end, which I just picked off waivers. So my Superb Owls might be getting a little healthier, but as you all know, it might not. Another guy could go down. My heart will go on was without wide receiver Devontae Adams. He had COVID-19. She really needs him back in her lineup. That's the number 3 overall pick in our draft, by the way. Tight end Darren Waller also missed time. He's usually one of the top tight ends when healthy. In the Eastern Territory, risky business has been without running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire since week 6, as he's on IR right now. But with Alvin Kamara, it hasn't really hurt as much so far with his point totals. He's been able to kind of make it up. He also lost quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick in week 1, still on IR, but he's got Tom Brady, so that hasn't mattered. Remember, the Titans was banged up a lot at running back early on in the season. His 4th-round draft pick, J.K. Dobbins, out for the year before the season started. He also lost running back Raheem Mostert for the season back in week 1. Wide receiver Antonio Brown's missed several weeks, being out until at least week 10 based on the reports I saw so far. But remember, the Titans was active on the waiver wire throughout this whole time. He now has injury replacements at running back: Darrell Williams, Khalil Herbert, and Dearness Johnson. Williams and Herbert have already stepped up for him, and Johnson looks to continue to have a role even though Chubb returned because Kareem Hunt is out. The big acquisition, though, for him was Cordarrelle Patterson. Patterson, that versatile running back, he can kind of play any position on the field. He might be getting more targets now with Calvin Ridley not playing. So Patterson might be the key for him to kind of make up for some of those injuries. The multiple scoregasms have been dinged up as well. Wide receiver Jarvis Landry was out for 4 weeks, and wide receiver Will Fuller has been on IR since week 5 with a return not imminent. Landry is back now, so I'm sure the scoregasms hope Landry steps up. And then you go running back James Robinson. He hurt his heel. He's day-to-day. That's good news, but he might be limited. He might miss a week or 2. We don't know. And now running back Eli Mitchell has a rib injury that limits him in practice, most likely. The scoregasms kind of been able to handle the losses at wide receiver, but Robinson and Mitchell are very important for her quest for the playoffs, so she needs them to be healthy. Green Acres is fairly healthy, and it's probably why he's 6-2, but tight end Dawson Knox is still considered day-to-day after missing a week. He might be back this week. And now wide receiver Sterling Shepard has a quad injury. He's most likely out. The injuries haven't hurt, and the tight end production did take a hit, but again, 6-2. I don't think he's worried too much. In the Western Territory, the Stellar Bitches are one of the worst injured teams here for fantasy. Quarterback Russell Wilson's been out since week 6. He's expected to come off IR before week 10, but Matthew Stafford has been great, so she hasn't really felt that loss that much. Running backs Gus Edwards and Miles Sanders are now on IR. Neither look like they're going to return soon, so her running backs are banged up. And then there's Calvin Ridley. We don't know about this situation. He said he's dealing with his mental health right now. He had to step away from football. Obviously our thoughts go out to Ridley. We know mental health is very important. We don't want this stuff going on. This stuff is all fantasy. It's all for fun, quick recovery. In fantasy purposes, it's a tough loss. And of course, the Stellar Bitches depth, is hit. Uncle Justy is also dealing with a lot of injuries. He might be the most injured team. Running back Saquon Barkley injured his ankle. back in week 5. He's been out since. He looks to be back this week, which is very much needed because running back Kareem Hunt on IR, out 4 to 6 weeks at least. Hunt was a top 5 back before the injury, so that's a huge loss. Running back Jamal Williams also has a thigh injury, and running back Jeff Wilson has been on the PUP list. Wilson is expected to practice soon, though, and should be back in the next 2 to 3 weeks, maybe. Wide receiver Michael Thomas is also on the PUP list. He still doesn't have a timetable to return, but we would guess he would come back at some point. Tight end Robert Tonyan out for the season, of course. He had him in his lineup last week. T.Y. Hilton, who has been battling injuries all season, now has a concussion. He's been ruled out this week, and it doesn't end there. We're still going with Uncle Justy. Wide receiver Julio Jones has been hurt, missed last week due to a hamstring injury. And tight end Rob Gronkowski has been out since week 4 and is now dealing with back spasms. That's just tough. The Siamese Dreamcats have been without running back David Montgomery since week 5, but Montgomery might be coming off IR in the next couple of weeks. They might choose to rest him more, though, if the Bears continue to fall out of the playoff race. So we have to see. Herbert has done well in his, since his absence. Wide receiver Kenny Galladay has been out since week 6. He's battling a knee injury. He might be back for week 9. Running back Latavius Murray missed the game, but the Cats have back Devonta Freeman. So even if Murray misses, the Cats have the backup. And of course, that brings us to our defending champion, Gal. Quarterback Dak Prescott missed week 8 despite looking okay in warm-ups. He should be fine to return in week 9. His absence did potentially cost Gal a win this past week, though. Running back Chris Carson's been on IR since week 5, but is expected to return by week 10. That loss hasn't hurt as much because Gal's got Najee Harris and Jonathan Taylor at running back. Backup quarterback Sam Darnold had a concussion. I think he dropped him now. And wide receiver Mike Williams was a little hurt at points this season as well. And I think that kind of stopped his crazy beginning that he was having. He was the number 1 wide receiver for a while. So as you can see, all of us have injuries to manage. So, some are hurting more than others in our league, but I think we should look ahead to week 9 and see how all these injuries affect the projections. The Western Territories first place squad 5-3, the Stellar Bitches, host Central Territories 2-6 Meow Master at Misty Forest. What is crazy here is that what is expected for Meow Master taking 2 zeros, including the loss of Derrick Henry, but yet the Stellar Bitches have just a 56.8% chance to win. Stafford and the Bills defense look to be keys for the Stellar Bitches. They need a lot of points from those 2 spots. Ezekiel Elliott should also be someone to watch, but A.J. Brown, Hopkins, and Hurts can also score big for Meow Master. So I feel like overall yards will actually go a long way in this matchup from spots where points will come at a premium. The Eastern Territories first place team, 6-2 Green Acres, travels to the Sea Angels to take on the Western Territories 3-5 Siamese Dreamcats. Green Acres enters with a 52% chance to win based on expected moves, though more might be made, especially with his coaching prowess. The Chase and Gage versus Thielen and Sanders battle at wide receiver seems very interesting to me. Running back total touchdowns will also be key, with both putting 3 out there at the moment, and the Cowboys versus the Patriots defense should be big. Lamar Jackson probably needs to do well too, as Tagovailoa has a good matchup for Green Acres on the other side. The Eastern Territories 4-4 multiple scoregasms travels to Steel Shores to take on the Central Territories 3-5. My Heart Will Go On. My Heart Will Go On comes in with a 53.1% chance to win. Devontae Adams has a good matchup, but Jordan Love will be throwing to him as Aaron Rodgers is out with COVID-19, hurting My Heart Will Go On. Derek Carr versus Ryan Tannehill will be interesting now with Rodgers out. And the Colts versus Raiders defense battle will also go a long way, most likely. The scoregasms do have the edge at running back, but the wide receiver advantage actually goes to My Heart Will Go On. The Central Territories first place squad, 4-4 Great Superior Superb Owls, travels to Skyward Peaks to take on the Western Territories Uncle Justy. The computer loves the road team right now, with the Superior Owls having a 78.4% chance to win. Patrick Mahomes versus Josh Allen is going to be key, as will Nick Chubb versus Saquon Barkley. A George Kittle return could be a huge boost for the Owls, and the Saints defense versus Miami should be key as well. I'm guessing wide receiver touchdowns will go a long way too. The Eastern Territories 5-3 Risky Business hosts the Central Territories 4-4 Loki Lebowski Thor at the Old Kingdom. Moves should still be made here, but a potential return of McCaffrey could be a big boost for Lebowski Thor. Otherwise, Kamara Pittman and the Steelers defense could be the big points players for Risky Business, while Lebowski Thor has many roster decisions to make at quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, and defense. And now it is time for in the next the Eastern Territories 4-4. Remember the Titans takes on the Western Territories 4-4 Gal in a rematch of last season's Green Bowl championship. Of course, remember the Titans were the favorites last season with the amount of points that they scored all year, but Gal kind of snuck into the second seed under the radar. Got a bye, and had two solid performances to take home that trophy. Remember, the Titans has made the playoffs in 2 of the last 3 seasons with second and third place finishes. Gal has made the playoffs twice in 5 seasons, but is the defending champ right now. And this one looks to have huge tiebreaker implications. Gal is the host as well. So before we go any further into this matchup, let's look at the next stop in our story, the Golden Sands.
Hello again. We get a championship rematch as 2 teams look to prove themselves as potential chosen ones. But before the details are hashed out, I think it is time to look at this next stop, the Golden Sands. This area is one where many are cautious. So many have disappeared, most likely buried in sand for all of eternity. In the past, there is said to be an ancient city that was home to tricksters and memory stealers. For it is said that everyone acts like what took place there never happened. In our folklore, we believe it is due to the tricksters and memory stealers working together to steal from those poor people. The dust storms were no match for even them, however, as the city was buried with only a few small remnants remaining of what was there. There are underground tunnels here in a strange bunker with radiation warnings. Not sure what that's about, but you are quite safe in the tunnels. At least from the dust storms. If you hear a rumble, it might be best you make sure that part of the tunnel isn't structurally weakened. Because something else swims this ocean of sand. Giant killer worms. These worms can not only hear your footsteps, but they can also read your mind and instill fear. That is probably why most just let the worms swallow them up. They are frozen with insanity of what they are seeing. But there is one interesting tidbit about this place. The bunker has an area guarded by some sort of a laser door. No one knows what's inside. The ones who tried to pass ended up in charred pieces. Perhaps there are important files inside. Perhaps it was a prison. Whatever it is, I'd be careful. Even if you somehow get past the lasers, there's a giant hole in the wall. Big enough for a killer worm. Now back to the match.
Remember, the Titans comes in with a 67% chance to win, but there are several key matchups to look at in this one. The Cooper Kupp versus Robert Woods one at wide receiver is big. Kupp is the clear favorite target of Matthew Stafford, but Woods has done more lately. Then there is the Joe Burrow versus Dak Prescott battle at quarterback. Can Burrow regroup after last week's loss to the Jets? Will Prescott's calf be 100%? Then there's the Bengals versus the Rams defense. The Rams just traded for Von Miller to make that one scary-looking pass rush. And the Titans just lost Derrick Henry for the season, which might mean more passes and more sacks for Miller. The Bengals just bungled it up against the Jets as well. But there are 2 key players I am looking at in this matchup that might be the big difference to this outcome. I start with Gal, and I turn to running back Jonathan Taylor, the Indianapolis Colts star. Taylor is averaging 5.4 yards per carry through 8 games for the Colts. He's also having a pretty great season, 649 rushing yards, 265 receiving yards, 7 total touchdowns. That's 120, and he's doing all this 121 carries and 21 receptions. Last season, he had 232 and 36 receptions in 15 games. He's on pace to pass both of those numbers. He's also on pace to top his 1,169 rushing yards from 2020 and should have more receiving yards than last year very soon. He's only like 30-something yards away. Taylor has scored a touchdown and has had over 100 total yards in each of his last 5 games. And he has the Jets coming up tonight, so the Taylor could be going nuts. The Jets are the second worst team against running backs. They have allowed 716 rushing yards, 553 receiving yards, and 13 total touchdowns, 11 of them on the ground. For Remember the Titans, I turned to his first-round pick, tight end Travis Kelce. Kelce was taken 6th overall, and he had a rough week last week on Monday Night Football, one of his worst games, but this time he gets the Packers defense. While the Packers have allowed just 393 yards and 3 touchdowns to tight ends this season, they've also allowed 43 receptions to the position. That's 10th worst. Kelce is not a typical tight end. He can turn open space into big plays, and if he gets several receptions, that could mean a 100-plus yard performance with a possible touchdown. Kelce has 560 yards and 4 touchdowns so far this season on 49 catches, but he hasn't scored since week 5, and he has scored in the single digits 4 times in the last 5 weeks. I expect that to change here, especially since Jair Alexander will most likely be covering Tyreek Hill. Mahomes will need to get the ball to Kelce in the middle of the field to have any kind of success in that offense, and I'm guessing they're going to pepper Kelce big time here. And that's the show for the week. I hope you enjoyed it. Next week, we get more information from our mysterious stranger, and the standings are destined to jump around again. Before we go, here are the updated power rankings headed into week 9.
Please follow the SunDried Tomatoes YouTube channel and watch content including original shows like Legends of the Diamond, random reactions, and Brewing the Facts, the SunDried Tomatoes podcast in video form, and other sports, brewing, or entertainment-related videos. You can like the Facebook page and follow me on Instagram at eclectic_yotso for news updates and just to get to know me better.